Seventh heaven, their 7th straight title and 14 overall in the competition. We talk about their legacy and will it ever be beaten. Anton Leonard-Brown may be facing a stint on the sideline, but how many matches could he miss for the All Blacks? And we're joined live by the Wallabies coach Eddie Jones. Well, on the weekend, the Crusaders were without 12 players, 8 All Blacks. The Chiefs were down to 14 men for 30 minutes. But regardless of the result, did we see, KT, one of the greatest ever Super Rugby finals? Oh, geez, yeah, it was a good game. I don't know about the greatest, but far out. I mean, I'm still buzzing from it, to be fair. You know, there were so many subplots that happened before the game, during the game, and, you know, the fallout's been massive, you know, with whatever side you've been on. So, oh, man, I'm still trying to come down from it. I'll be honest with you. Mills, what do you reckon?
Oh, I just wish it was all a dream, right? The result. But
you haven't got
it. It was a bad dream. It was a bad dream. But I think, man, there's so many twists, like you mentioned, right? I mean, you're almost waiting for it to open up. But so many plots, you know, the ill discipline through to then, you know, a try that was scored by Moonga, then you're sort of coming back right to the very end, 3 yellow cards. But you can't deny how good this Crusaders team is, Jeff.
Just run it back again. We could run last year's show, couldn't we? Look, it's a champion roster, champion coach. It was an outstanding performance. The Chiefs blew this. They had their opportunity. They were at home. Their ill discipline, their mistakes. They gave the Crusaders an opportunity to go on and win another title, and it was impressive. I can't argue with what they were able to achieve, but ultimately the Chiefs gave themselves a chance to win a game that they had no right to be in, given how they'd played. And the Crusaders had to go to the well, as deep as they'd ever been. But for me, you need things to beat a champion to go your way, and they didn't for the Chiefs. And ultimately, Razor gets to celebrate. Look, I think we'd all moved on already before the game, hoping that we were going to see something different. The Crusaders weren't ready. They weren't ready for 80% of the country to be happy. There's one province and one region which can celebrate, and rightfully so, and you don't get to move on. We don't get to move on. We now wait to Super Rugby. Super Rugby next year, right, Kirsty?
Just on
to
that
find
note,
a new champion.
On the Chiefs blowing it, you could see the devastation all over their faces, right? KT, you were there. You were standing next to them when that ball was kicked out for the last time. Yeah, and being right on the field and being right amongst the mix, and you can feel like the deflation, all the emotions from them. And it was hard. It was hard. You know, it's hard seeing people in that situation. But then you look over 10 metres and there's absolute elation. You know, and yeah, I mean, it's been a 7-year backspin. Let's be honest, it's been a 7-year backspin. But you know what, though, and there's a lot of hate out there for the Crusaders and why they're so successful. I think it's up to everyone else to get to that point, to get to that elitism and try and not mirror that, but try and, you know, in their own way, find that success and their tools and their foundation. Because, I mean, to be able to win a title's hard. To be able to repeat is even harder. To do it 7 times in a row, like that, man, far out. That's elitism. That's awesome.
Don't get me started. Well, mate, actually, get me started.
Okay,
we'll talk about the Super Rugby system. We'll talk about that in a moment.
You're going
but let's celebrate. Let's celebrate. No, it's not breaking. I'll get to that.
But
we have to celebrate.
Trying to.
Move on.
Move on.
What's next? Move on. I'm talking about next year.
Okay, look, I'm now.
It's glasses of
You might as well just say it now.
Fog it up. I need a drink. Let me just take a drink. Hold on.
Okay, he can take
it's a buffalo.
He can take a sip on his drink. We're about to talk Super Rugby with Nurofen, available at Chemist Warehouse for the final time. Yes, the greatness in this Crusaders outfit is undeniable. To put it into perspective, some great players of the game never ever picked up a title. I mean, Jeff, you're one of them. It's hard enough to win 1, but to win 7 in a row under the same coach, he's never ever missed. You cannot deny them of this. I mean, will this ever be repeated in the professional era?
No, it's not going to be repeated. I can tell you why. Because the most influential player in Super Rugby has actually left them as well, and that's Richie Mo'unga. So the best 10 playing in this competition with a coach and a roster and squad, and this squad is deep. But I can't argue with what they've created down there. But they've been allowed to create that. They've attracted the best talent. They've found new talent. You're not going to run it back again, though. This is not going to... I hear you what. I don't think they'll win the title next year. I genuinely do not think that this squad will win the title next year, but I will tell you what, I think it'll be the same 2 teams. I'll call it early that they're going to be in the Super Rugby final. But
they had it arguably a better 10 when you had Dan Carter in there. It's the environment that's been created, right? The coaches, the players. I mean, Scott Barrett said yesterday, you're doing it for the man next to you. Those guys would kill for each other.
One thing I sort of equate to for the Crusaders and why they've been so successful, they don't look 1 or 2 or 3 years down the track. You know, they're 5, 6, 7. I think that's where the Chiefs That's what they're building now.
Yeah.
Clayton spoke about 3 years ago, they were absolute mud. And now they've gone to these finals, right? So they're 3 years deep. So I think they've got these young players. Next year, I think, like you say, we start seeing the ramifications and the results of that, and that's when it starts flowing on. So I think you're right there.
I take it like, man, and don't get me wrong, the Crusaders has been successful, but I go a little bit further. I think the environment is also the back staff. Like every single time we've gone down, I'm not talking about, you know, the physios, I'm talking about everyone that's involved on match day and things. We've all been down there, right?
Yeah.
They're so welcoming. As much as you want to hate them, they are so welcoming. Not just one person or sort of...
Look at how humble they were last night.
Exactly, but also they all get along with the team. Every member of the team knows who that back staff is. And I think back to, you know, our time, you sort of go, okay, well, they sort of sit there. But he's created this legacy built around not just the team, but the wider team. And I was really impressed, you know, every single time we go down there, how involved they are and what it means to them. So when they talk about our team, our family, you're not just talking about the guys that go out there in the field, the biggest squad, the physios, you're talking about everyone, and that's what they've created.
Well, I get that. It's a difficult, challenging place to play, and they've set the environment and they've set the culture, and it helped them turn a corner, right? How do you win playoff games? How do you win titles, KT? If you think about how they've gone about it, what's been their biggest strength from their group and team?
The leadership.
Leadership? Yeah. What else? Their tight five?
Yeah.
And their defence.
Yeah, defence.
Tight five and defence. You watch them, the way that they play the game, when it comes down to the business end of the season, their ability to suffocate the opposition, the fact they've got unbelievable discipline. We saw it last night. The discipline from one team hurt one side, the other team's discipline. They conceded only 5 yellow cards in the whole season, the Crusaders. That tells you how disciplined they were, how they managed the situations in game, and that's that leadership you're talking about. But the tight five has been a constant for them. Has been a constant. Cody Taylor last night, 2 All Black locks and a new tight head prop or loose head prop, whatever side you want to put to Mighty Williams. A foundation they've had in the middle. They've been able to use their scrum and line out. Line out last night, they had 21 line outs. Yeah. There was only 5 scrums in the game. They dominated the defensive side of the game. The Chiefs were only able to breach them, I think, 3 times in the entire contest. So ultimately, when I look at their side, and that's where culture comes into it. When you talk to a team, you always talk about defence. When you talk about culture, that's something they've had, and they've had the players been able to deliver it for a long period of time.
This team also, from an outsider looking in, means more to them than the All Blacks. Look at Sam Whitelock last night. The doctor told him not to play. The All Blacks medical staff were saying don't play. He played a full 80 minutes for this team. Richie Mo'unga has said in the past that the Crusaders mean more to him than the All Blacks. This is what it means. This is what they've built.
So is that a problem? Is this an issue? Oh, I think it's an issue. I mean, I'll ask you this question. I mean, yes, there were those great players, Dan Carter and Richie McCaw, who are part of a champion Crusaders side again. Actually, they won a champion side. They won, I think, 1 title there over that time. But we were a better All Black team. But in 2011 and 2015, we were the best team in the world. There's a period of about 6 years, and the Crusaders didn't win a title in that whole time. Is that a problem? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Well, I don't think it's a problem for New Zealand rugby, right? The fact that you know that could be the case, but I think they've created that. If it means that much to them, you know, that's obviously why. I mean, we don't know the full extent of, you know, Sam Whitelock. There's obviously he's come through and he's fine. So, you know, they've got to make those decisions. He said
he's going to be in trouble with the medical staff.
Well, exactly. But I think, I mean, it goes back to our point, right? What an environment. If you create an environment like that, similar to the All Blacks when they're dominating, if you create an environment like that, people care so much about it, of course they're going to want to play it before anything else.
I think that in the case of Sam, he deserves to do what he wants. He's done everything for New Zealand rugby, whether it be at the top level, winning World Cups, and you know, it's his last game for his franchise. You know what? If he wants to play for his franchise, I think that guy in particular deserves to make that call.
It's like Ali Savia going and playing fullback at club rugby. Peter Rupu sneaking off and playing a game of club footy as well. Jerry Collins, those guys playing a game of rugby league every so often and on the Sunday as well. Like the passion and desire to go out there and play. Sam Whitelock 100% deserves the right to say, you know what, I'm fit and available, want to play, and I want one more run around. Now look, I know that might not be ideal, but that once again comes to that point. We need to transfer that passion, whatever it might be, and that determination to get us to the next level.
But, I mean, they're going to when Razor's in there next year, right? You can see it coming. He's going to transfer the same thing.
Yeah, and you know what? Sammy's been out for a couple of weeks, so maybe he needs a bit of a run before he hits internationals. You know what I mean? So it's not to say it's going to be derogatory to what he's doing, you know. He's had 80 minutes of really tough football close to international code. Watch we start pretty soon.
Okay, well, time to get stuck into the next topic, and this one is not going to be any lighter. Yesterday, during the referee medal presentation, they were booed by the local fans, and there's three things that are stirring people up. The first one is the Anton Leonard-Brown yellow card. Should it have been a red card? He's since gone to the judiciary and has been cited. The other two, the forward pass missed by Jack Goodhue, which led to a try before half-time, and the TMO intervention when Damian McKenzie was offside, Jeff. Some big moments in this game. Were they right? Were they wrong?
I think when you look at it is the fact there's the forward pass is a big miss. I'll give you this. That'll be a red card at the Rugby World Cup. Yeah. Without a doubt, that will be a red card at the Rugby World Cup this year. In terms of the repeated infringements, I think if you go and look at them, the accumulative pressure that the Crusaders were putting on the Chiefs, and they continued to infringe, but ultimately a forward pass is a forward pass. And why these are important moments in the game, because you talk about momentum swings, and this is what Clayton... I mean, do we all agree that's a forward pass?
Oh, I mean, the definition is the ball has to go from the back motion. That's forward by... That's Aaron Rodgers forward, right? That's Ryan forward.
Yeah, and ultimately what's happened on the back of this is they've gotten in a position off the set piece, resulting they've gone and scored a try off it. So they've gone from having a set piece themselves, which they had very little of in the game, Mills, to the Crusaders. But I think in terms of the fans, now, and we were there at the game, that moment and then another moment that happens in the second half on a technicality around Damian McKenzie, it's well, if you can't pick up that, but you can pick up this, when you're at the ground, you're going, what's just happened? And I haven't seen this all season. Yeah. But you've picked it up in the final and disallowed a try, which is a remarkable try. And the result from this is, guess what? It's a kick to the corner, it's a line-out drive, and the Crusaders score. So when you talk about momentum shifts, and I think that's where the crowd, they've seen yellow card, forward pass, turnover, yellow card, game gone. They've got swept up in the emotion of that, and they've found it incredibly frustrating.
But the thing is, the TMO can't rule on that forward pass.
No, he can't.
That's the difference. He can on that line out, but he can't on that forward pass.
But he can only... So if there'd been two more phases, and this is where it gets challenging, if there'd been two more phases after that line break, he wouldn't have been able to go back to Damian McKenzie being inside the 10-man line. But ultimately, that's a responsibility of the ARs is to pick up the forward pass and the offsides for the player teams being back. And if that had been picked up straight away, blown a whistle, try never get scored, no one's worried. Unfortunately, what's happened is one of the best tries of the year has been ruled out for the home team and would have given them a significant buffer.
3 yellow cards from 3 All Blacks, Anton Leonard-Brown, Luke Jacobson, and then this one to Sam Cane in the final 10 minutes, Mills. Is that concerning that 3 of our All Blacks, I mean, are we going to get away with this stuff at the Rugby World Cup?
Well, I think decision-making in the heat of the battle, I mean, these are big moments. He's definitely offside. The ball's not out. He's coming from the side, and that is, I mean, you know, who's that? Lester Fane, so it's Leo Willie, isn't it? He picks it up. You know, then you've got Narawa offside too. That's definite, you know, infringement. So he could have actually scored. Should we be concerned? I think... You know, you've got to take it in the context of the competition and also where they're at. This is massive. You know, they're under the pun. They've already sort of got one, you know, a bit of pressure under them. I think they'll make better decisions. Hopefully they don't get into the place where we're chasing again.
So, but the game wasn't over then.
No.
There was still a good 6 minutes left. There was a lot of time left in the game, KT. And then they still had a penalty shot at goal, which could have got them in front. I'm interested in your thoughts on whether or not maybe it was a 54, 55-metre kick. He'd made one the week before. But ultimately, the way they played the last 3 minutes as well for me, Sam Cane wasn't on the field at this point as well, is actually they should have actually still played some territory, because your best way to get a penalty would have been to play in the right part of the field. The Crusaders' defence line was 13 up the front. You tried to play when they were never going to let you play. You sort of forced them to actually go, you come back at us, maybe break up the defence with a counter-attack. Ultimately, they presented them with an opportunity at the end.
But that's what you were talking about right at the start of the show with the Crusaders and their leadership and their championship minutes. That's what they bait you into do. They set it up. You go do this, we're going to dare you to do it. And exactly what they did, and the Chiefs fell for it, you know what I mean? And that's the difference between those two teams in those moments.
Just quickly, going back to Anton Leonard-Brown, what happens now? Do we see him in the Rugby Championship? Does he miss a few games? I mean, they've said that met the red card threshold.
He'll plead guilty, right?
You'd have to. I mean,
he's missing games. It just depends how many.
Have we ever seen it when it's sort of been down, it hasn't been picked up as a red card, and then they've gone and he's been picked up? In
yeah, absolutely.
Judicial?
It has been picked up by the judicial. So it's reached the threshold. It's a red card. I'm guessing good behaviour. I couldn't find anywhere where he's had a previous record of being in front of the judiciary. So, I mean, but he's going to miss some time.
Yeah. And in that situation, like, he should know better. I know he's trying to make a difference in that situation, but you've got to get your tech right. That hurt. They really, really hurt him.
OK, well, time now for the match stats. Let's take a look at them and what the penalty count was looking like, right? 15-8. Look at time in opposition 22. The Chiefs, they killed themselves, didn't they?
Well, they did, and I think that's probably flattering, that 15-8, because it brought it back. I think the killer was it was 7-0, you know, at one stage. And when you talk about trying to get your match together and getting those sort of set pieces, which have been very good this year, the Chiefs. I mean, it's just hard. I mean, you're in a grand final against the best team in the last decade. I mean, it's hard to come back.
I think because of the penalties they gave away, it allowed them to spend that time in opposition 22, which led to the set-piece tries, right? So once again, it comes down to discipline.
How much rugby did the Crusaders actually have to play to win this game? They didn't have to play much at all. They scored one great try, Richie Mo'unga off a fantastic break down the left-hand edge. They had a numerical advantage in that, and 2 line-out drives through ill-discipline, territory. You know that's going to hurt you.
But I record advantage for 50 minutes of the game.
Yeah. What's the one team you don't want to give?
That's tough. And so you've got to give it to the Chiefs also to get themselves back to be able to win it.
But I reckon it was the timing of that missed forward pass just before the half. You know what I mean? Like, they had the momentum. If they go down the other end and score, it's a very different game going into half-time.
More importantly, the Crusaders don't score.
Yeah.
They don't have to score themselves, the Crusaders don't score.
Massive, man. That was massive in the context of that final.
Crusaders win it in the end, though, don't they? But one man that wasn't in a red and black jersey that absolutely stood out was Imoni Narawa, and that is why he's out Musashi, Power Player of the weekend. Did he show that he is ready, Mills, to take the Rugby World Cup by storm, as he is starting right winger for the All Blacks?
100%. He showed what he can do. This is a big week emotionally, right? You know, he's just been named for, you know, the All Blacks. He goes out there and goes, wow. You could almost go into your shell thinking, OK, cool, that's right, but he doesn't. He gets himself back into it. The stuff that he done, the magic that he done, the calls that he had, you know, he parked it to the side and played an absolute blinder, you know, in my mind. His kicking, his ability, Damian McKenzie got caught a few times, KT, but also he just showed plenty of heart. It was like, man, I want that All Black number 14 or 11 jersey, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just coming out party. Like, a game like this was, like you said, with all the emotion with the ABs and then coming out and coming in the final. But to play like this, to score tries, but I was more impressed with his work defensively. As a winger, he come in, he made a lot of spot tackles, made a lot of tackles in positions where you're not normally seen him. And I think that's something that probably is flowing. And he probably could have been named the man of the match. I don't know why he wasn't.
I'll tell you what, for me as well, what I was impressed about, stop fishing, what I was impressed about, they also used him as his kicking game. Yeah. Now, he kicked the ball out once on the full, where he got in 2 minds, but to actually clear, and his clearance in the 22, well, I thought they might have used Stevenson, thought he did a good job there as well. So what I do like is there's a real clarity. He doesn't get caught in 2 minds. He understands the role he has to play, but also he's got great work rate. Yeah. He gets himself involved in the game. I mean, I was incredibly impressed, and now it looks as though with Mark Talia being out with an injury and probably unavailable for a couple of test matches, give him a start.
All-round skill. You know, for a winger, you know, he can kick, he kicks well, he can chip over the top, he's got plenty of speed, he makes good decisions on defensively, he's strong in the tackle. That's kind of what you want. That's a lot of safety sort of things.
Automatic selection?
Well, I hope he gets a shot, you know, the first test.
Well, we spoke about it last week when we had the naming on here. Some guys are going to have another opportunity of another week to put their hands up. And that's exactly what Mr. Number 14 did last night in Imoni Narawa.
Well, the 2 best controllers in the game went head-to-head. Our Gillette head-to-head today is Richie Mo'unga against Damian McKenzie. Richie, he has been spreading his magic, sprinkling it through Super Rugby for 8 years now, and he's picked up 7 titles. This guy is going to be so missed by the Crusaders and by New Zealand Rugby, Jeff.
And it was a really good caterpillar that he did afterwards.
Very flexible.
It was very, very good. Very, very good. Oh, he's clearly going to be missed. His season's not done. The season's not over, by the way. We've got an All Black campaign, and this guy here...
I thought we were done tonight.
We're not done tonight. We're coming back next week, and we're going again. There's plenty more to talk about. I'm not going to run out. Look, this was a great matchup. I actually think both players had their moments. I thought McKenzie was very direct in what he did. He tried to create. In terms of the kicking, I think the nature of the game now has changed, Mills. The fact there's so much space in the middle of the field. Sometimes it seems aimless, but sometimes you just have to have that game of chess, right?
Yeah, set it all up, get the ball to bounce, you know, hope to sort of create some division when the line comes up and then have a counter-attack opportunity. I love the fact McKenzie also, he was tough last night. They targeted him nice and early with the tackles. He made a lot of tackles. I think he was up to 8 in the first sort of 10 minutes. He was leading the tackle count. But what comforts me is we've got really good first fives going into this next phase in the All Blacks. Those two have played. Richie Mo'unga, he steps up in the big moments. He's had a relatively quiet season until that semi-final. Boom, there he comes down again. McKenzie, he's come back in fantastic nick, after his sabbatical, or actually going overseas to Japan. But there's comfort there for Ian Foster and KT to say, well, man, we've got some quality first five, and we've still got Broden Barrett there as well that can jam us too.
I think they're very two different players. We just saw the stats. Like D-Mac had a lot more kicky meters. Richie had less running meters, but Richie picks his times when to go, when to pass, when to distribute. That's his strength of being the general and just sitting in the pocket. Look at the way he's trailing, and then he picks his moment to hit. This ball seats a hole. There we go. I'm going to eject myself right there, and that's the beauty of Richie Mo'unga.
He's the best flatline attack player we have in the country when he's going forward,
totally.
And he gets a little bit of momentum. So now the job for us is, as an All Black side, is to give him a platform with some momentum going forward. Get us over the advantage line, get us carrying forward, allow him to take it to the line and create. We'll see the best of him.
This is what you said last year, right, Mills, that the All Blacks weren't necessarily playing a game plan for him to be at his best compared to what we've been seeing in Super Rugby.
Hand it over to him. Why is he so dominant? 7 titles, This is his team. He controls it how he wants it to be controlled. He can't be going into this, this next phase of the All Blacks thinking, oh man, I'm trying to start myself into a position. I don't think, you can't afford to have that, especially with your 10 and your driver. Yeah. It's got to be his team and the way he sort of plays that. So, I hope that. So I think he's our 10. I think in terms of what he's done and how he's played, you've got to hand it to him.
Yeah, I think he's earned that right this season, right? And I think he's got a coach now in Jason Ryan who knows what he needs. So he's going to try and get a 4-pack that's going to give him that platform at that All Black level, I think.
Well, this has just been the warm-up. Time now to talk more about the Crusaders and their dominance of not just Super Rugby in the last 7 years, but over 28 years in this competition, winning 14 titles. Jeff, is there a downside to the success?
Well, the question I have is the fact that we talk about the competition itself, and we've talked about Super Rugby, and we want a competitiveness, right? Well, ultimately, look, they've had incredible depth. We knew when we wrote down all the teams at the start of the season, there were 2 squads that stood out, and it were the Chiefs and Crusaders. That's going to significantly change for them next year when you lose a Richie Mo'unga and there's some talent. So for me, I look at it and go, if you're going to make this competition more even, those players then have to shift around a little bit. You have to manage that. But ultimately, it's about players wanting to go to different cultures and environments and perform. So I look at it right now and I can probably talk about the teams that are going to be successful next year. Is that what we want? Do we want the ability for these players to move, Mills? Or is the fact that, once again, are we comfortable that, I don't know, Christian Leowilli next year, when Cullen Grace is fit and Ethan Blackadder is fit and Tom Christie is fit, he goes back to playing a reserve or playing half the games? Are we comfortable with that layer of talent not getting an opportunity to start in Super Rugby when they could be starting somewhere else?
Well, I think there is a sort of discussion that needs to say, well, an argument, to say, well, if everyone's fit in that Crusaders, they're going to have a backlog of guys that are not even going to play. We won't even see. Leowilli is probably a perfect example, right? If what he had realistically played, have they got the best out of him? Absolutely, they have. And now you're sitting there going, man, where does he sit in when Cullen Grace in there? Or if he does start, where does Cullen Grace and Blackadder and that actually end up? So I think there is an argument to say we've got to spread that around, but you've also still got to come back. This is why the Crusaders are the best. They've got a good environment. Guys want to go there to be the Leowillis.
Why aren't teams creating this environment like the Crusaders then, KT, so players want to come and play for these teams?
Well, that's the question. That's the 7 championship question.
I honestly don't think a draft. I don't think a draft's the answer. I don't think a draft is the answer. Why are you controlling where a young kid goes to play when you're growing up in an area and you're saying, well, no, by the way, we've decided you're going to play in Sydney now? No, I think we need to open up. If you're going to open up, you actually need a window where we have to have eligibility in this competition. And New Zealand are playing in Australia. If you want to get that, absolutely. You're playing in the same competition.
Right?
Available for the All Blacks and the Wallabies, the same competition. You want players to be in an open market. You create, I think, a more competitive market through salary caps, which is what the NRL does so well. Yeah. It gives you an opportunity to sign players. These are players, no one moves. Yeah. Now, the squads are going to be the same when we see it at the end of the year.
The reason why that doesn't happen like that is because of our IP. You know, the All Black brand, and we were worried about sharing things around, sharing the fact that we come into this All Black environment and we're sharing sort of, you know, plays and things like that. That's the downside. But I think in terms of the competition itself, I agree with you. It needs to open up in terms of, you know, if you're Australian, you're eligible for the Wallabies, you can play in somewhere like Japan, or as long as it's in the same competition. I totally agree with that.
Even Moana Pacifica, that'd be nice if some of the players want to go play for them.
Absolutely. I mean, evenness, competitiveness, the fact at the start of the season we're not looking at it and going, who's clearly got the depth. You know, the Cinderella stories, we've had the odd one. And the Highlanders in 2015 in a World Cup year was one of those, but they still had some guys who were All Black quality who came into it. So I just think we've got to look at it, but I don't think the draft is the way. I think it's in terms of salaries and how you manage that. Yeah.
No, my hooky, my welcome back to the breakdown. Well, the Wallabies have named their 34-man rugby championship squad. It involves 8 new names and 5 players based overseas, new co-captains as well. Joining us now is the head coach of the Wallabies from camp on the Gold Coast, who's looking very much like a messiah with the bed frame. Eddie, thank you so much for joining us. Is this the squad to bring the Bledisloe Cup back to Australia?
Well, that's the aim. You know, the odds are in favour for us. 22 years since we've won it, so there's a lot of odds saying, you know, we should be able to do the business this year.
Coach, I want to ask you, you finished up your England stint and you could have gone anywhere in the world to coach. Why did you decide to come back to Australia and coach the Wallabies?
Well, I think, you know, it's nice to coach around the world, and I love, you know, coaching in England and Japan, but Australia's your home country, and you know, we haven't been doing that well over the last period of time, and to have the honour and privilege to coach your own country again is just too good an opportunity to knock back, mate.
Eddie, mentioning that, I mean, what's the noticeable difference that you've had? You've been over in the Northern Hemisphere in Japan, you come back to these players, and congratulations on your squad. I mean, does that influence the way you want to play the game, given the differences in terms of the player itself?
Well, the big thing that's changed, mate, is the demographics of the team. Now we have a strong Pacific population playing Super Rugby and competing for spots in the Wallabies, and you know, the power of the players we have is completely different to 20 years ago. You know, so that's changed the game completely in Australia, and we've got to find a way. It's a bit like New Zealand, maybe in the early 2000s, find a way to get the right balance of our teams, and that's the challenge going forward. And what does Australian rugby style look like with that?
Eddie, there's not a lot of time. There's not a lot of test matches. Are you coming in right at the very start, full guns blazing? When you talk about your squad, do you know what your 23 looks like in terms of not just for the first test, but what you're planning going forward?
Well, you'd always like to know that. But, you know, given HIA and the physical contest of the game, we know injuries play a big part. You know, we need to have a squad of 33, 34 players for the Rugby Championship, and those players then have they have a head start for the World Cup following that.
Coach, you talk about the makeup of your team and the changing demographic of that side. So for you, what are your coaching pillars and foundations that you've always leaned back on that you're going to pass into this new Wallaby squad?
Well, they're pretty simple, mate. We had Bob Dwyer come down on Monday. He said 2 things to me. He said, pass shorter and run straighter. And I reckon that's about right. And I reckon Australian rugby's always been at its best when we're attacking the line. You know, we're not a team that's generally played well in big spaces. We're a team that creates space, and we're all at our best when we're probing, you know, we're hitting gaps, and then we're taking the ball to space. Whereas a lot of times what I've seen in Australian rugby over the last period of time, we've been playing to space. So we've been taking that space around. We've got to get better at creating space and then using the space.
Nice. Eddie, I know you watched the game last night. You watched Super Rugby, you know, since you've been back. Is there anything that you've sort of, you know, saying to yourself, there's a weakness in New Zealand rugby that we can try and attack? Hey, I'm not asking you to name the first priority. I'm just asking you down, you know, possibly the 10th. And rest assured, no All Black coaches watch this program. In fact, I don't even think anyone watches this program. So, you know, you can give us insight.
But what I've seen, I really enjoyed how the Chiefs played, but it reminded me so much of the 2000 final with the Brumbies versus the Crusaders. You make all the running in the game, you play some good rugby, but you don't get the result because the Crusaders always go back to that set-piece power. You know, and that's probably the big difference between Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere rugby. Most of the teams in the Northern Hemisphere go to that set-piece power as they get out. You know, and in Southern Hemisphere, the Crusaders really only have that consistently. The Brumbies have it to an extent, and that's the difference. So, you know, that might paint a little picture, mate.
Now, Eddie, Sir John Kirwan is in Italy celebrating his daughter's wedding, but he didn't want to miss out, so he sent in this question for you.
Buonasera a tutti, un po' di voci di corridoio. Nah, I've actually got a question for you, Eddie. Couple of questions, mate. Really, my first question is, you know, we've been talking about franchises, all these players going overseas. Only one side from Australia getting into the top 4. Do you see 5 franchises are a problem, or are you pretty happy that they carry on with the 5 franchises? The second thing is, do we need a Heineken Cup in the Southern Hemisphere, bringing in Japanese side, bringing in a side from America, probably the West Coast, possibly one in Hong Kong? What do we need to do to start really creating some income for these super sides so they can stand alone? Hope you're well, mate. I'm over here in Italy with you, mate Ongoro, causing trouble.
Well, firstly, I think we need a Suntory Cup. That'd be fantastic. Another level of rugby above Super Rugby, I think it'd be fantastic, where you do bring sides in the Southern Hemisphere. You know, a couple of Japanese sides, your top 2 or 3 from New Zealand, top 1 or 2 from Australia. And, you know, obviously the Pacific, I reckon that'd be fantastic, where you see the best, because people want to see the best players play against each other. You know, you saw in Super Rugby New Zealand when the Chiefs were playing Auckland or Canterbury, where the top players are involved, people come and watch those games. So we've got to get more of that best against the best. In terms of 5 teams in Australia, I think at the moment that's set in stone. Is that the best thing for the development of Australian rugby? I think we've just got to get better at identifying talent and keeping the talent and getting kids to know the advantages of playing rugby. You know, rugby leagues, we know it's a great sport and it's a great domestic sport, but basically you can't play rugby league anywhere outside of Australia. You know, there's little bits in New Zealand, little bits in England, little bits in France. But rugby, you know, what's it played in 180 countries, and you can go anywhere in the world and basically get a rugby. And now, you know, basically you can do your shoelaces up, you can get paid to play, which is even better.
It's a great segue, just give me there, Coach, with the rugby league. You brought Joey Johns into the mix. What have you used him and utilised him for around your squad?
Well, hoping he might make comeback, mate. He'd still be pretty useful at 10, I reckon. No, just about, yeah, and it goes back to what Bob was saying. We want to play straighter, mate. Yeah. You know, that's always been the Australian way. And as I said, we've lost our way a little bit there. And Andrew Johns, I've never seen a guy who understands that part of the game better than him. And he's, you know, just the little tricks he does with his eyes and his feet. And, you know, we've got a young bloke in Carter Gordon who's only played 15 Super Rugby games. So to have like 35 minutes with the Maestros, you know, going to be invaluable for his career.
Eddie, I just wanted to touch on the eligibility laws. Why have you opted to pick players from overseas? We've got Richie Mo'unga and other strong players heading overseas next year. Do you think that it's something that the All Blacks should be looking into as well?
No, I think Richie should dedicate himself to the Sheba. he's gonna have his work cut out there playing against Suntory, so he needs to concentrate on that. You don't need him back here. Look, we want our best players to play in Super Rugby, but we've also got to understand that there are opportunities for players to set themselves up for life playing overseas, and I don't think we can take that away from them. There's a picture of Marika Koroibete. We don't know his family situation and what he needs for his family. So to make judgments that they have to play in Australia just 100%, I think is just a little bit too restrictive. I think we need to keep open the option of guys who have played, and done their service in Australia or New Zealand playing overseas.
Eddie, I just want to ask, I mean, you talk about the rugby league side of it. It's a massive getting Joseph Suaalii over in terms of that. I mean, and awesome for rugby in itself because it was a real big talking point. But are we expecting that, given the competitive market you guys have over in Australia, that you guys are really trying to hone in on some more rugby league players?
Yeah, we got about 3 or 4 that are ready to sign, mate. Big names too. Big names. I can't tell you now, but no, I think it adds to the competitive tension. If you open the Daily Telegraph in Sydney, you've got to go to the last page, and even the last page now has probably got lawn bowls on instead of rugby. So we need to get rugby back competing as a winter sport. And by signing a guy like Suaalii, it helps that. If we sign 2 or 3 others, it'll help that. And it'll also show kids who, a lot of the kids now, go to a big private school, and by the time they're 15, if they're good readers of the game, they catch and pass. They've got a Rabbitohs contract or a Rooster contract in front of them, and the inevitability of that is hard to stop because we're competing against 17 clubs that all have the recruitment budget of Rugby Australia. So we've got to get some of those players back, and ideally we keep more of them at a young age, which we have to do. But then to get a few of them back after they've done an apprenticeship in rugby league is fantastic.
Hey, Coach, I know you've got 12 meetings to get to, so we'll let you go real quick. Have you got us a tip for the horses at Randwick, please?
No, mate, I backed something yesterday. Race 2, number 15 is still coming, mate. I think it's going to end up in the Blue Factory.
Eddie Jones, the Messiah, Australia are in good hands with you in charge. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Good luck against South Africa, and we'll see you in Melbourne.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
cheers.
Coach.
Thank you so much. Eddie Jones joining us there. A bit of a legend, isn't he? Absolutely hilarious. But you have to think, when this man's in charge and you look at this squad, should we be a little bit nervous about Australia? We've been saying it since he came in. But when you look at the team that they've assembled and what he's doing...
Well, listen to what he's saying. They want to run a bit straighter. He's got some Pacific influence in there. So... he's definitely trying to get that sort of physical balance. Man, this team is a good team, and the people he's bringing in to actually fix some of the issues they've had is, wow, exciting.
The Reds and the Brumbies came to Hamilton and played the Chiefs and showed they're well and truly prepared and defensively can be very, very good. Defence wins titles. We saw that last night. That's how it's going to come about. This is a good squad. This is a really, really good team. I don't think we should be worried, but we should be wary. The fact that they're capable.
I want to know who the 3 rugby league stars are that he's going to play. He just dropped that bomb in there, didn't he?
As long as they're not from the Warriors, I don't care.
He's a fish. He's the master tactician, though, right? Hey, Eddie. Hey, but what I love about him is, he's open and honest. He looks outside the box, and I think with the team that he's got and where he's just come from, you look at the European, the way they attack now, they come in around the corner. I was just watching the under-20s. It's a new version of attack, and I think he's going to bring that back here and try and use these young this squad that he's got to start employing that.
Well, how good is it that Test match rugby is on our doorstep, under 2 weeks away before the Rugby Championship kicks off? We're going to make all the big calls, or Jeff is anyway, right after this. Who's going to start and who's going to miss out altogether?
Let's get him!
And the Rugby Championship all starts Sunday, the 9th of July. Just under 2 weeks from now, early morning on Sunday from Mendoza, we've got South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. 1 game over there and 1 game back here in New Zealand. But it was clear and obvious from what Ian Foster, Jason Ryan and the troops said last week, the All Blacks want to make a statement before they get to the Rugby World Cup. Every game is important to send a message to the world. So on that, gentlemen, do these new caps play? There's 5 new names, add in Sean Stevenson, and that is 6. How many of these guys get a chance in Argentina in just under 2 weeks' time, Jeff?
I'll just go over here. I just want to counter where Mills.
She asked you, mate.
I haven't even read
me. Do they get a run? I think someone will get a run. Absolutely. I'll be surprised. We talked about Amoni Narawa. I would be surprised if he doesn't get an opportunity. I think Tamaiti Williams has clearly come into the squad. I'll be disappointed if we didn't see Sammy Penny-Finau, because that's a position that we are looking for someone to establish himself, whether it be 6 or 8. That's 3 of them.
Are they all 3 going to start and play the first game, or
I don't think they start.
I don't think they start necessarily.
I think they'll be in a squad.
Narawa
starts in the back.
But
I think you've got to go with a tough forward pack to Argentina over there. You've got to go with some rough riders there.
They've got, Justin Marshall said it in the post-match show last night. There is no time.
Yeah.
It's now the present. There's 2 weeks between the final last night and becoming an All Black and fighting for a position to go to a Rugby World Cup, Mills. The time is now for these players, and we need to win some games with some authority in tough positions. Won't be easy in Argentina. South Africa will not be easy as well. I love the challenge of this first month for the All Blacks.
Yeah, I've written down my starting 15. But
well, give it to us, Mills.
Oh, okay. No questions. You can't come back at me with questions. You can't come back. Okay, so I've got De Groot, Taylor, Lomax, Retallick, Vey, because I think Whitelock gets rested, okay? And then I've got Barrett on the blind side. Kane, who's obviously the captain. Artie at the back. Smith, Moonga. Barrett, that's Geordie, and Ioane in the centres. Whainganuku, Narawa, and obviously Jordan. I think Jordan goes at the back. And so I think a lot of those guys that you mentioned, Roigard even, they might sort of just say, hey, let's put them in the reserves and get them on. So no feedback, okay? No feedback.
Well, we'll definitely give you feedback. I mean, do you think they play? Do you think it's... if you're going to find out about Cam Roigard, he has to have some opportunity. And the reality is that the first test match might be that.
I don't think so. I don't think you have Roigard there. I think you get him in the environment, you get him up to the mix. I think maybe he makes it 23, but I don't think you start him in Nagi and give him a bit of time maybe in the second half. But I think you need to set a solid platform, and I think that's what we see initially.
Tamaiti Williams is a given for me. Is he a given for everybody else?
He's played a lot of time, though. You know what I mean?
Mate, he's a young man. I mean, I saw everything I wanted to see out of a young man last night. In a pressure environment, the set piece, the fact that the set piece there weren't a lot of scrums, but his size, his ball carrying, and when they're ball carrying, I think he's an absolute given.
Yeah, we talked about Amoni Narawa being the star of the Rugby World Cup, but this guy, Jason Ryan, said to me last week, he's going to change the game.
Yeah, but I think you have those starters like Millsy has, and then you bring him on to solidify the scrum and then turn the old knife a little bit, you know, and then see what he's got and armour him up. But I don't think you start him just because of the minutes he's played this season.
No, I think they all come off the bench. I mean, Roigard, Tamaiti, Sammy Penny, they've got to get a shot because you know what, they've got to get a result. That's a team that I named, hell of a good team, I tell you that. And
it's easier to play in front than come from behind.
Right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw it in right now. I'm changing our number 8.
Oosh.
I'm changing our number 8, and I'm actually changing the makeup of our bench, and I believe that's how we'll win our Rugby World Cup. And I'm looking at around the world and the globe and the way the game's being played and the nature and the physicality you need. And if you want to be a defensive, dominant team, your loose forwards have to be big men. And you look at all the top sides around the world, their number 8s are big men. When we moved Ardie Savia to number 8 because we didn't have a solution in that position, we wanted it on the field. Specialists and specialist positions for me. I'm looking at a guy like Luke Jacobson on his performance last night, his consistency, his size, his ability to hit and continue to carry. I'm looking at a change. I want impact from the bench, and it's Ardie Savia. For me, I'm looking at Luke Jacobson. I saw a right shoulder, a left shoulder, a carry, a hit. Everything I wanted to see from a number 8. I'm changing the dynamic of what we're looking for. If I go back and look at our success, what did we have? We had Richie McCaw, we had Kieran Reid, and we had Jerome Kano. All could hit, all could carry, all had relentless physicality through the course of the 80 minutes that they played.
Who's at 6 then?
I'm going with Shannon Frizzell right now. I'm bringing size, once again, impact, carry, defence, get over the advantage line, short passes. You've heard Eddie Jones. Carry and strong. Jason Ryan talked about physicality.
Concrete shoulders.
Concrete?
Yeah.
They want people that can hit.
Yeah.
That's where do we won in the north.
Yeah, I see your point. The thing is for me is you've got to get your balance right. I mean, our strengths in the loose forwards is that. Okay, there's a bit of that, but you named 2 players, Rito and also Jerome Kano, along with Richie. 2 of those players can actually play a skill set that a back can play. We haven't kind of got that. We need to keep in what you're saying. I understand, but I think you've still got to have a mix of someone that can actually play out a little bit wider, has the skill set of a back. The downside that we've had over the past is we haven't been able to replace those particular players, Jerome's and Ritos, with that type of style. And I don't think going into and copying, you heard what Jason Ryan said, we've got to play to our strengths, and that's open rugby with a little bit of balance. So when you've got Kane in there, who's going to give that, Artie probably brings that for me. When I mentioned Barrett, I mean, they bring hard physical game, but Artie brings that little bit of extra when he's been able to break tackles, leg drive, and let the other guys, work on the harder stuff. This sort of stuff, big moments in the game. I don't think we can just rely on a defensive effort just to get us through that.
I think we need size and we need the ability to just carry over the advantage line in tight spaces. Look, Artie is a remarkable athlete. The one thing he plays full on for 80 minutes. The last 30 minutes is when we'll win test matches. And his impact off the bench, I think, would actually be greater than his first 60 minutes starting. I honestly believe that. Like another couple of positions, like a Damien McKenzie coming off the bench and making that sort of impact.
Yeah. What's a perfect example? Because then you're going to get into the mould of when do you put him on? Is it when we're winning, or is it when you're losing to get him on? Because the reason I asked that is because he could possibly sit there and not even come on for the last 10 minutes. Then you're asking him to a heck of a lot.
So he can come on, and I 100% believe for 10, 15, 20 minutes, if you ask him to replace Sam Cane, absolutely. I have no issue with that in the 7 position or at number 8, depending on what you're needing. No issue. He played at 7 the last couple of games. He's played 6 for the All Blacks. I mean, but I think the pure size. I'm looking on both sides of the ball, and I look at what Ireland have, what France have. It is size. South Africa, what we're going to face in a quarter-final. Those 3 teams, that's the first test. And Rob Valentini will find... And Valentini for the Brumbies against the Chiefs was awesome. These are big men, guys who are 112, 114 kgs, who shift. And they don't need footwork. There's no footwork required here. It is, I've got the ball and I'm going forward. That's what you need. We need players who can get over the advantage line to unleash these players, these backs that we've got.
Yeah, and I think, like we saw, this is the semi-final, right, with Valentini. He doesn't lose that contact area. He's always falling forward, does he? And that's what you're talking about. And I agree with you in that sense. You need someone to carry. Look, that's 5-6 metres over the advantage line.
That's fast ball.
Fast ball.
That's not fighting for 2 more metres. That's hitting the ground deck and gone.
And then that's what Jason Ryan's looking for. That's why Talatui and Neil Willie have been so effective in these finals football, right? Because that's all they do, get over the advantage line, hit, and then just do their jobs over the ball. But I still think, don't ever go Wellington. Don't ever go through Wellington ever again, my mate.
He's just dropped New Zealand rugby's best player for the last year.
All his games are in Wellington next year, eh?
Start Artie, though. That's all I'm saying.
Hold on, you told me before the show, you agree with me, and all of a sudden you're flipped.
I agree with you saying with the carries. I still agree with you. Remember, Artie can play fullback.
What a surprise.
He can play fullback as well.
Well, he did.
Hey, get the genders out. Flip-flop.
One last question before we settle things down for the night. Is Barrett and Retallick or Barrett and Whitelock the best locking combination, or do you still stick to the tried and true?
Mate, you got how many guys have played how many tests together and are 2 legends? You don't muck around. You don't muck around with that ingredients, mate.
Leaving them, Mills?
I think you leave them, but I think the Barrett plays a big role in 6. And if Whitelock's not quite ready, you're chucking him in there in the.
Bodie Barrett starts at fullback, by the way.
Guess what? I've got Sam Whitelock coming off the bench.
He's off
the bench next week.
I've got Sam Whitelock off the bench. There you go. You watch.
Who do you start?
Barrett and Retallick.
That's us. Good night. These guys will keep arguing.
I've gone.
Up the Monday!